Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. We are pleased to invite not one, but two special guests today with us with orgSource, Sherry Budziak, CEO of orgSource. Welcome.
Thank you, Erin. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Kevin Ordonez with an Enye there, Managing Director of Digital Strategies. Welcome.
Thanks, Erin. Lucas, great to be here.
So good to see you guys. And of course, Lucas, my partner in crime here on these shows. Good to see you.
This is our first foursome, so it feels like a real golf event now.
I know.
I'm excited.
Oh, how we all can't wait to get back to the Charity Golf Association golf tournament, right?
For sure. For sure.
I'd even go out in the 30-degree weather right now. I'm like, that could be something we could do. So we welcome you guys. You know, we have been going through a bunch of topics and a bunch of really interesting experts in the industry. And as Lucas and I were talking yesterday and trying to just build through the story that we've been telling, we're talking a lot about your focus specifically on digital transformation. We know that orgSource does a variety of type of strategy planning, marketing, and digital transformation consultation. But the digital transformation thing really caught our eye, and primarily because a lot of people have been very much focused on the pivot to virtual events. And it would almost seem that people would think this is the only digital transformation an association might need to go through. But learning more about your business, we of course have learned that there is an entire way of looking at an ecosystem of digital transformation for any organization, period, but especially an association where sometimes we see that industry as needing to sort of catch up to the regular business industry and trends. So we're curious to hear from you a little bit around how have you been approaching digital transformation amidst a pandemic where people now seem to be pivoting and focusing in maybe one specific area of it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Erin. You know, we've been working with organizations for more than 15 years around the whole discussion of digital transformation. And Kevin and I will always say the IT part of it is the easiest part. And we get this look like we have four heads. Like, what are you talking about? But digital transformation, we kind of put it into buckets, and we actually have kind of this digital readiness assessment questionnaire, because when you get into digital transformation, we look at different buckets of strategy. You know, what is the decision-making process in the organization, looking at revenue, looking at the people, process, and the culture. So there's a lot of different components that go into a successful kind of digital transformation. And as you said, what we're seeing right now that associations are struggling with is, okay, we pivoted to an online meeting. We pivoted to, you know, providing courses, and we hurried up and got an LMS. But what is the business plan now? How are we going to move into the future, and what does 2021 look like? So the calls I'm getting now are, well, Sherry, what does hybrid look like? Or how do we price our online education? Or because they didn't think about the business case first, they reacted to a technology first. So anyway, when we try to work with organizations, we try to get them to think about the strategy and the business around the technology first. And then, like I said, then we say, well, we can help you find the right technology that kind of supports that overall strategy.
Not a shocker. I mean, start with the business plan and then go into developing what your execution strategy is going to be. It completely makes sense. I love it. And I can't highly recommend companies like orgSource enough to our association clients, because what inevitably I see happening, especially in this year, is you run and you maybe vet out 2 or 3 different suppliers that are looking, or vendors that are going to do online virtual events, for example, and you get sold. And it's very easy. There's really great salespeople in our industry from a vendor's perspective. And if you could have sort of a coaching aspect that sort of walks along with you and talks about, hey, how does this fit into your bigger strategy? And also, I vetted, you know, multiple vendors out, and let me tell you also what's out there. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's been interesting because March, April, May, the only calls I was getting was, Sherry, tell me what platform I need to use for my virtual meeting. And as soon as I would ask a question, the follow-up was, yeah, but who's using X, Y, or Z? And I'm like, but what are we trying to achieve? So what we saw is that people who did that and then had multiple events through the year, they've switched systems 2 or 3 times because they weren't asking the right questions. But so we always start, help with asking the right questions and then finding the right technology to support, as I said, kind of that business strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Kevin, for you, when you're sort of managing through with a title like Managing Director of Digital Strategies, I'm assuming you're sort of in maybe the nuts and bolts of those transitions. How much are you also just talking through change management and sort of internal behavior to get the adoption to be there as well, not just for external customers, like Sherry's mentioning, you're switching from platform to platform, but also internal stakeholders who aren't maybe ready for that digital transformation, because of course that word encapsulates a lot for organizations.
Yeah, certainly change management is always going on. And I think, this pandemic's really brought transparency, and it's shown a light into the organization's leadership, culture, processes, and of course their technology capabilities. So over this last year, we've seen organizations who said, hey, we can't even just work from home, so we're just going to take the month off and not worry about it and maybe come back. And certainly those organizations are struggling. And then we've seen on the total other side of the spectrum, organizations who are really using 2020 as a strategic opportunity to really get things done differently. And some of the things that we've seen, over this last year, organizations really need to increase their operational efficiency now that the work from home is kind of the standard, and to deliver a better customer experience, whether that's through the web, through the online virtual meetings, through engagement. And we're seeing organizations, go through that. Well, we need better integrations or a deeper integration or that better connection to our customers. And there's a lot of change management needs to go through that, because it's who's doing what. And like Sherry said earlier, is, what are those questions? Let's start with the why. And then we can figure out with the what and the how and the who. But a lot of organizations just skip over the why and go right into, how we're going to do this and with what system. And then what they get themselves into is a more challenging change management process, because now they just inserted something that either doesn't support their business plan, doesn't integrate with their systems, or their processes have to change. And that's also where we're seeing some organizations switch around from system to system, because now they're figuring out the why and understanding, oh, we just don't want to just put on a virtual mirror of our annual meeting. We want more engagement with our sponsors and with our attendees. So it's been really interesting over this last year.
Yeah, I really like the language that you guys use, the transparency, the starting with why. There's all these sort of entrepreneurial elements to the language that you use, which is very necessary in the association marketplace. And I've been arguing for years is missing to a degree, but you all literally wrote the book on it. I mean, how have you seen some of the elements that you've written about in your books that you've been able to implement, maybe specifically in this period?
Yeah, so, some of us might have heard of, John F. Kennedy's famous quote of about the dual nature of a crisis, right? So he said, in a crisis, you got to be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity. Yeah. And I think that's where that entrepreneurial spirit kind of bubbles up in a lot of these organizations, is those who recognize this as an opportunity. And I think we've seen a couple things too, is organizations are getting over the pressures of failing, right? There's always been that, I don't know, association must have, we have to succeed and be successful in everything we touch and do. And I don't know if that's coming from the board or the CEO, or it's just been, this is what we need to do. So certainly this past year, trying something new and failing at it is now acceptable. And I think that's another key attribute of an entrepreneur is, yeah, we're going to fail and, get up and do it again or do it differently, try something new. And I think we've seen a couple specific organizations really shine through and use this time as an opportunity. So we've seen organizations where they wanted to downplay or almost get rid of their traditional annual meeting because it made more sense to do 4 regional meetings and really cover the country or the international scope more effectively. So going virtual gave them that opportunity to say, well, is the annual meeting the best for us? Let's see how 4 or 5 regional meetings do instead of just one annual one. Some other customers we've seen, is creating new products and to address a wider audience. So not just their members or their certificates, but hey, let's move up the chain and let's go after hospital systems or organizations, not just the people working in those hospitals. And another one that comes to mind is, we have organizations that have created a great culture and have a building or office space that kind of highlights that culture. But with the work from home, how do they keep their culture alive? So we've seen organizations really keeping that culture alive through the work at home environment. But it all comes back to recognizing this as an opportunity and embracing failure as an option and encouraging the staff to keep going.
I'm curious, Sherry, as you've been thinking about this, because again, most of the conversations we're having have been around the pivot that's happened in 2020, but you guys were doing digital transformation before 2020 appeared on our radar. And a lot of what we have read about from your sources is talking about the data management, and the idea of bringing data more into the story around strategy. And that this has been a transformation that's been happening across many industries. But again, when we think about associations, not everyone's always thinking about a monolithic industry that moves terribly fast, right? So I'm assuming that this is some of the challenges that you guys are really trying to help associations and organizations through, is this idea that, we need to move you not only into different ways of working, but we need to catch you up to the real depth and knowledge that can come from the data that you manage. So can you tell me a little bit about what were you all seeing before the great pivot of 2020 that still consisted of really true digital transformation?
Yeah, so, prior to 2020, there was always discussion around, yes, we know we have data. Yes, we know our data is a mess. Yes, we don't know how to report on the data and we need to do this, but it was kind of this slow move. Now we're having a lot of discussions with associations that they realize it's something that they need that knowledge right now in order not only to make decisions today, but to figure out what their customers need in the future in order to survive. So kind of tying back in, Lucas, we wrote a book, Association 4.0, Positioning for Success in an Era of Disruption. And that was from the association execs mindset, or those were case studies of those associations that were really focused on culture, really focused on data, all these things that we talk about. And kind of to tie into this discussion about, we end up writing the second book that we published this year on the entrepreneurial side of things, because what we've always said is that, entrepreneurs are always having to think about what's next, what's coming, how to continually evolve. And when we look at digital transformation, we always say it's not just a one, like right now, people are calling us saying, we need a BI tool, or how do we put together a data lake? It's not a one project. And associations think in this mindset of it's a project and we're done. The board approved this project with this budget and we're done. So when we go into organizations, we say, great, we have these projects. You need a new AMS, you need a new CMS, you need, to be able to report on your data, but this doesn't end, right? There's not really an end time. So when you talk about thinking like an entrepreneur, when we wrote the second book, it was really to kind of tell those stories from folks in our industry that have had that mindset, and just to help associations think a little bit differently, and to kind of, also tie into what Kevin said, take those calculated risks, and that's okay. And so that is that people realize like it's okay that we put on a virtual meeting and something went wrong. Like no one's bleeding, no one's dying. We were okay. It was just a virtual meeting.
What did we learn?
Yeah. So that's been a hard conversation, earlier when we're doing digital transformation projects, to really work with execs and staff to say, it's not going to be 100%. It's okay. And you can fix it. Like
Right.
some things, you know, the data, certain amount, you know, data didn't come over. We'll fix that. Like it can be fixed and nobody's going to get in trouble or those types of
Right.
things. So there was a lot of those lessons learned that, you know, we've coached organizations along the way prior to 2020, but now I guess we have some realistic things where we say, see, it was okay. It was
Yeah.
okay.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, and I like what you said, Sherry. Digital transformation is not a start and a stop.
Right.
It's a continuation. It's always evolving. It's always gonna. It's, you know, you may have projects on the roadmap, but they don't end. It's like mowing the grass. It's going to grow again, and you're going to need to come back and keep doing it and keep revisiting in order to, you know, keep it current, keep it relevant, and then keeping your eye down the road on what the future looks like, making sure that you're planning appropriately.
This is awesome stuff. Well, we love to leave our audience with something to have to call you guys about. So I don't want to be too selfish here and have you reveal all of your wonderful insights. So for those of you out there that find some of this very interesting, we couldn't more highly recommend two very smart individuals plus their teams at orgSource. So thank you guys both so much for being here today to just give us a sneak peek into digital transformation, entrepreneurship, and just a lot of really good ways to think about forward looking for associations. As we end every episode, we always look to our guests to help us better understand who else should we be talking to. And I'm hoping we get one from each of you maybe, but who would you tell us to go talk to continue to extend these wonderful conversations?
Yeah, so Erin, I've been having a lot of conversations with association CEOs that are asking about what does member engagement look like in the future, and what does it really look like into 2021 and dues renewals and all those types of things. So I've got a great friend, Amanda Kaiser. She's runs Kaiser Insights, and
Awesome.
she's a consultant in this area. And I thought it'd be great for you guys to have that conversation with her.
We definitely need that for sure. That's awesome. Anything from you, Kevin? Someone you'd suggest?
Yeah, sure. You know, we talked a lot about the why and what's your story. So Stuart Meyer, he's the founder of a company called Social Frequency, and this is the work he does. You know, helps understand and get the why out, storytelling, and he encourages folks to do storytelling for prospects and members and customers to really understand the why and get the value out of their engagement.
I love it. All right, Amanda and Stuart, we're coming for you. Thank you both for being with us and for being our final episode of 2020. We are going to take a pause over the holiday weeks, but we appreciate everyone having been here with us since August, since we started these conversations, and what a wonderful way to end the conversation this year. And we look forward to seeing everyone back in January. So thank you both for being here and have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks for having us.
Happy New Year, and thank you so much for having us.
It's great.